Welcome everyone to the Nightmares Minicast. It's like the Nightmares podcast, but more mini. Today we're talking about some behind-the-scenes information about the 1986 David Cronenberg movie The Fly, starring Jeff Goldblum and Gina Davis. Have you guys ever seen The Fly before?
Yes.
No, actually.
No.
I'm terribly ashamed to admit that I have not seen The Fly all the way through.
It's probably one of my favorite horror movies. Definitely one of my favorite 1980s horror movies. One of Cronenberg's best. Probably my favorite Jeff Goldblum performance. Because that's a movie where he has to literally carry the movie because he's the star. He's not some supporting character as he usually is.
He's The Fly. I got that.
But yeah, it's a really good movie. But I've been doing some research about the movie lately for another project, and there's some behind-the-scenes information that I thought was really interesting that isn't relevant for what I'm working on, but I figured would be good enough to bring up for a little mini-cast here. So before David Cronenberg took on The Fly, apparently he was actually going to be the director of Total Recall. Which, of course, went on to become the Schwarzenegger movie in 1990, directed by Paul Verhoeven. Mel Brooks brought David Cronenberg the script for The Fly. Yeah, Mel Brooks produced The Fly.
Of all fucking people in the world.
Yeah. Brooks Films produced The Fly. Mel Brooks, I believe, is the one that actually reached out to Cronenberg. Mel Brooks also produced The Elephant Man.
Wow.
But he kept his name. He kept his name off of the credits because he knew nobody would take these more serious, dramatic movies seriously if they saw Mel Brooks' name on it, because obviously it's the guy that did Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein.
Kind of what Disney does with fucking Hollywood Pictures and a couple other subsidiaries that allows them to do non-Disney shit.
Yeah, kind of, but not really, but kind of.
Yeah.
Brooks brought the script to David Cronenberg, and at that time that draft of the script was written by a man named Charles Edward Pogue, who also wrote Psycho 3, which is a very bizarre sequel, but we're not here to talk about that one today. And he also went on to write the original Dragonheart in 1996.
Oh, all right. I saw that movie when I was a kid.
Same.
I barely remember. The only thing I remember about that movie is the score. It's a really good score, but that's I don't remember anything else.
I just know there was a dragon in it. That's all I give a fuck about.
I never saw it. The most I've seen of that movie is after I finished up with one of Wes's Nerd Brew shoots. We went to this pizza place, and they had Dragonheart on the TV with the sound off.
Okay. I guess that works.
Fuck it, why not?
I'd much rather watch Rain of Fire.
Rain of Fire is a much better movie.
I haven't seen that one either.
Dude, that actually is the movie that I realized something very important about Matthew McConaughey. Matthew McConaughey can act. He just gets paid way too much fucking money to play himself.
Yeah, sure.
He's a fucking psycho in that movie, and he's great. The joke was that he just shaves his head and then he can act.
Anyway, so that's who wrote the draft of the script that Brooks brought to Cronenberg, and Cronenberg really liked that draft of the script. There were a few changes that he would go on to make, but I'll cover that soon. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, Cronenberg had to turn down the project because he was attached to Total Recall, working with Dino De Laurentiis as the producer of that one. So Brooks then offered and gave the directing job to Robert Bierman, I think is how his name is pronounced, Bierman.
Bierman.
It is pretty sweet.
Mostly because of a short film that he did, which the title of that one's escaping me right now. But Bierman is probably most famous for eventually going on to direct the Nicolas Cage movie Vampire's Kiss.
Didn't I see also in the credits that he had something to do with Showgirls as well?
You're thinking of Verhoeven, who would go on to do Total Recall.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm talking about Bierman originally directing The Fly.
Okay.
And then Bierman had to leave the project because of a family matter. And so The Fly was without a director for a little bit. But meanwhile, during that time, Cronenberg backed out of Total Recall because he just wasn't agreeing with De Laurentiis about the direction that the script should be brought. So he left the project. So then Mel Brooks found out that Cronenberg was free again, offered him The Fly, and Cronenberg was just like, I really like the script. There are a few changes I want to make. As long as you let me do what I want, I'm in. Okay.
You know something funny though? I think about this all the time. Like I think I hear stories like that about original directors being attached to it, and you just start to think, like I wonder what that film would have been like.
Yeah.
Like I'm curious to know if Arnold would have even been in that movie had Cronenberg directed it.
Because back when Cronenberg was directing, this was still pre-Predator. So this would have been 1985-ish when these talks would have been happening. So Terminator came out.
And then
Schwarzenegger would have been a name, but he still wasn't... he was big probably at that time, but not the huge that he would have become post-Predator.
Terminator is one of the movies that made Arnold who he is today. Absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt.
Well, he also had Conan under his belt before.
Conan was slightly before. I don't know if the second one came out yet, but I know that Conan was a big one, but Terminator is the one that essentially thrust in his career.
I know he blew up then.
Yeah.
That was the one that was Schwarzenegger is here. What was the one that basically said Schwarzenegger is here to stay?
Terminator.
Was it? I could have sworn that there wasn't.
But what was between Terminator and Predator is kind of what I'm...
I mean, you had a few other action movies. I'm pretty sure Commando was before that. Was it?
I think Commando was 84. I have to look it up. So maybe. I don't know.
That might have been 85, actually.
Okay.
Okay, so this would have been... So these talks would have been happening around the time Commando would have been happening.
Okay, so that was his explosion. Terminator put him on the map, but his explosion was that 84, 85, 86... run where he did all those he was a fucking ATM.
Regardless, he was in the best action movies. Every time there was a new big action movie coming out, if Schwarzenegger's name was attached to it, you were going to see it.
I mean that's why I made the joke. He's a fucking ATM.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is, would have Total Recall been an action movie had Cronenberg touched it?
Because it is based off of a Philip K. Dick short story, which I've never read. I have no idea what the tone of the original short story is.
Would it have been an action movie? Maybe. It wouldn't have been as action heavy, maybe, but it still would have been, it wouldn't have been a horror movie, if that's what you're trying to
say. It was probably never going to be a horror movie.
Yeah.
Okay.
But there is definitely some body horror elements to the movie we got.
Yeah, 100%.
So those elements probably would have been more to the nth degree if Cronenberg did it. If mid-'80s Cronenberg did it. I wonder if the action movie-ness might have been what one of the disagreements was about.
I mean, because I know that I vaguely remember the whole story about Total Recall and how there's a lot of drama and all the switching around, and Arnold wanted to do it for a really long time because I believe he read the short story. I heard this in an interview with him that he read the short story and he really did want to do it. So. You know what? I think if Cronenberg would have stayed true to this, to the story, I think Arnold would have been down because he was personally wanted to be tied with it. I think he had his issues with the original producing team, directing team as well. There was some kind of drama going on there with him. I don't remember.
The little research I found, there was no mention of Schwarzenegger at that time. It was just Cronenberg and De Laurentiis.
Okay.
So I don't even think they even started casting talks at that point, for all I know.
Okay.
It was all their disagreements were about scripting.
Yeah. But that's that is truly though the ultimate, discussion though. You hear about these stories, like I was saying before, and what movie would it be? What would it be? I think that Arnold and him would have found a way to make it work. I would like to think that because from what I heard, Arnold was very committed to the project. So, but Zach's giving a little squinty eye, so I'm very curious to hear.
I don't know, because as you know, Arnold's very particular with what he wants to do, who he works with. He gives a shit about that. If he doesn't like it, he will tell you, "Fuck you, this is stupid."
I know Schwarzenegger became kind of family-oriented after a certain point. This would have been before he had
Kindergarten Cop.
That's that's at least 90s.
No, it was 90. Kindergarten Cop was 90. That was, and I found it hilarious. half the movie he's Arnold, and then the other half of the movie he's Mr. Mom. Like, like if you really think of, like, at the very beginning, he's like a hardened detective, and he goes into a bar and shoots a bunch of people. And then like the other half of the movie, he's fucking Mr. Mom.
I'm a cop, you idiots.
Get down now.
I'm Detective John Kimball.
Who is your daddy and what does he do? Yeah. He made so much fucking money on that movie. It was disgusting.
I can circle back to that in a minute.
Yeah.
This sort of close out what I was talking about. So Cronenberg took on The Fly, and from what I understand, for the most part, Pogue's script is, for the most part, what we got in terms of story structure. I guess in his script, Goldblum's and Gina Davis's characters were actually married as opposed to just meeting at the beginning of the movie. The maggot baby sequence was actually the ending of the story as opposed to being a dream sequence partway through.
Okay.
So because like Cronenberg felt like ending it on that just felt like a joke that went against the whole drama. And he was actually originally going to be getting rid of that scene, but as like the pregnancy aspect became more prominent, he was like, no, let's keep that scene, just change the context of it just to make it work better for the story we're telling. There are a few other changes too, but as far as like the general structure and everything goes, it's, from what I understand, Cronenberg's final rewrite is pretty close to what the Pogue script was.
Okay. All right.
And then, of course, so that movie came out in 1986. Chris Wallace won an Oscar for Best Makeup for it, which was well-deserved. And then we didn't get Total Recall for another 4 years in 1990, directed by Paul Verhoeven, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. And of course, that one also won an Oscar for its visual effects. And I believe Rob Bottin, who did the effects for The Thing, was also on the team for Total Recall. Once you know that, it's like you do kind of see some similarities in some of the construction of some of those, let's call them creatures. In Total Recall, like I don't know what you would call them.
Sure.
Mutants.
Mutants, that was it, mutants. They're still creature effects, technically.
And who can forget those 3 tits? I mean, you know. That's
And of course, the eye bulge.
Oh, of course.
Arnold's eye bulge.
Yes. Reminds me of that video with the Arnold alphabet.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
You know what the funny thing, while you were talking about that, and I was thinking about this, I think that had the movie come out when they were planning on it come out, Arnold's career might very well look very different. Because that might have been a different shift, that might have been a different thing, especially if Cronenberg got his hands on it.
Cronenberg can be pretty extreme.
Yeah,
there definitely would have been a lot more nudity in Cronenberg's version.
And there would have
but I don't think Schwarzenegger's career would have changed at all.
I don't know, but maybe Cronenberg.
If anything, he would have had one less movie under his belt that people fucking love. But that's really the farthest I can see it going.
I wonder if Arnold would have took up the challenge and leaned heavier into the drama aspect and the story aspect rather than the action aspect, and became less of the action star and more of the drama star.
50-50. It also depends on if he liked what he read.
That's very true. It's very,
again, if he didn't like it,
or maybe it would have led to a career where he splits both the big budget movies, but also does a smaller budget movie too.
Which, ironic enough, is very, very common now. Like it was not. He probably would have started a trend much.
Like
earlier.
he probably would have done stuff like Maggie a lot earlier.
That's
probably. I don't know.
I don't know.
You know what? Though,
I don't think I'd go that far.
He was also really young and seasoned Arnold is very different from 80s Arnold, who was fucking winning every 2 seconds.
But this is also, of course, assuming that Cronenberg would have had Schwarzenegger in his version. Because, like I said, I don't even think they even entered casting talks yet when he left.
That's true.
So yeah, that's some behind-the-scenes information about how The Fly came to be and what Total Recall could have been at one point. I think that would have definitely made for an interesting alternate universe.
Yes.
But I'm glad that we ended up with what we ended up with, because the version of Total Recall we have is pretty great, and the version of The Fly we have is pretty great. So...
Fuck the remake.
We win. There is no remake.
Total Recall?
There is no remake of Total Recall.
Oh, yeah, sure, Brendan.
There's no Jeepers Creepers 3, and there's no Total Recall remake.
Anyway, thank you all for listening to this episode of the Nightmares Minicast. Or if you're watching us on YouTube, thank you for watching this video version of the Minicast. You can check all of our other previous episodes of the Nightmares Podcast, wherever podcasts are available. Also, be sure to check us out on social media at Midwest Horror Network on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and
Slasher.
And of course, if you are watching us on YouTube, if you could stab that like button, smash that subscribe, and click that little dingy bell to be notified every time we drop a new video right here on MHN, because the algorithms in YouTube are kind of weird. And if you've also smashed the subscribe button, go ahead and smash the share button. That'd be awesome too. And thank you so much for hanging out with us. We are finally doing video. We appreciate you coming and hanging out with us. We will see you next time. Bye.